The movie begins in Los Angeles with a bank money transport truck. The guards decide to stop at a restaurant to grab food, but suddenly they are attacked by a gang of masked criminals. The truck driver triggers the alarm and one of the gang members orders him to step out, but the driver refuses. At that point, the gang decides to break the front windshield of the truck. One of the guards is about to draw his gun to fight back, but a gang member shoots him, then they kill the driver. We then see a hacker working for the gang named John, who informs them that the police will arrive within 30 seconds. Realizing this, they decide to flee and place a bomb in the car they came with to destroy all evidence. However, before they can escape in the money transport truck, the police arrive. A fierce gunfight ensues, and the police manage to kill one of the gang members. But the gang ultimately kills all the police officers. They then take the money transport truck and another car, escaping the scene. Meanwhile, John ensures their route is clear, guiding them away from any roads with police presence. In the end, they successfully reach their hideout without being chased. We then see Ray, the leader of the gang, extremely upset about what happened. He tells Bosco that what he did was a mistake and they didn't need to kill the guards. But Bosco replies that the guard tried to draw his weapon, so he had no choice but to kill him. Ray then asks about their companion Marcus, wanting to confirm if he was really dead, and Bosco assures him that Marcus is indeed dead. Ray then instructs Bosco to keep an eye on the investigation that will follow the case and to find out which officer will be in charge. We are then introduced to Officer Nick, the person responsible for handling the case. He arrives at the crime scene with his colleagues, who will assist him in the investigation. Nick is surprised when they inform him that the money transport truck was empty. He tells them that this gang is professional and must be planning something bigger since they must have known the truck was empty. Next, we see Bosco watching the detective and his team. Then he returns to the hideout to show them a picture of the detective who will be leading the case. Meanwhile, Nick was in a meeting with the officers. After extensive investigations, they concluded that Ray was the main suspect in the case, as he had been released from prison 8 months ago and was known for his bank robberies, being highly skilled at them. They managed to track down a man named Donnie and learned that he worked at a nightclub, so they decided to start investigating him. The next day, Nick went to the nightclub posing as a regular patron and then left the place. However, after Donnie stepped outside, Nick ambushed him, knocking him unconscious. When Donnie woke up, he found himself in an apartment with Nick and the other officers. Donnie realized they were police officers but told them he hadn't done anything to warrant his arrest. Nick showed him a picture of him talking to Ray. Donnie, however, refused to tell the truth, claiming that Ray was just a customer who came by occasionally and that he had no real connection with him. At that point, Nick showed his harsh side, telling Donnie that he would kill him if he didn't confess everything he knew. Nick started choking him, which forced Donnie to admit everything. Nick asked him about the gang's latest operation and the reason why Ray stole an empty money transport truck. Donnie explained that he was just a driver and that the other gang members didn't discuss such details in front of him. He had only recently started working with them because he needed the money. One of the gang members had suggested that he join them, and when Ray discovered that he was a skilled driver, he decided to bring him into the group. They gave him a small cut from each robbery because they feared the police could track them through the money. Donnie also gave Nick the names of all the gang members. Nick told Donnie that he would let him go, but would reach out if he needed him again. The next day, Ray was in a meeting with his gang to plan their new operation. He told them that this heist would be one of the biggest they had ever pulled off. They were planning to rob the Federal Reserve Bank, which is one of the most heavily guarded banks in the world. Ray explained that all the streets surrounding the bank were under surveillance and that if they stayed in the area for more than 2 minutes, the police would show up and ask them to leave. He also warned them that if the police spotted them twice, they would be arrested and treated as suspects. Ray explained to the gang that the challenge they would face was that the money they were planning to steal had serial numbers, meaning that if they tried to use it, it would lead to their arrest. He also clarified that any deposit that reaches the Federal Reserve Bank involves separating old money from new money. The serial numbers are removed from the old money before it is placed into a machine to be shredded and discarded. Their mission would be to access the money from which the serial numbers had been removed, but before it was shredded, allowing them to steal cash that could not be traced. The only way they could get inside was through the back door used by the trucks delivering money to the bank. It was then revealed that their previous theft of the money transport truck was for this purpose. They intended to deposit all the money they had previously stolen into the bank, as they couldn't use it due to the serial numbers. Meanwhile, Nick was in a meeting and had gathered information about the gang members. He learned that Ray and his right-hand man, Levu, had served together in Navy operations. Levu was an explosives expert while Ray specialized in weapons combat. Most of the gang members shared similar backgrounds, with each one being highly skilled in a particular field. Nick told his colleagues that their task wouldn't be easy and that they were dealing with dangerous individuals. The next day, Ray continued explaining their plan to the gang. He informed them that during the heist, they would take control of the bank system, shutting down the power and surveillance cameras. However, they would face a challenge. The money counting room was connected to a separate power system, meaning that the only thing still operational would be the cameras inside that room. They planned to jam the cameras for only 2 minutes, which would be just enough time to grab the money. The following day, Donnie went to the Federal Reserve Bank, posing as a delivery person from a Chinese restaurant. They had managed this by hacking into the phone of one of the bank employees, who regularly ordered food. Meanwhile, Nick and the other officers were monitoring them closely. Ray was also keeping an eye on Donnie from outside the bank. Donnie successfully entered the bank without arousing suspicion from the security guards at the entrance. He delivered the food, then went to the bathroom where he hid a food bag in the ceiling. After that, he left the bank without any issues. Later, Nick discussed the situation with the officers, and they wondered how the gang planned to pull off such a massive bank heist. They realized that Donnie wasn't going to help them since he hadn't come forward with any information. Thus, they decided to continue monitoring the gang and catch them in the act. The next day, Ray and his gang were having a meal at a restaurant. Nick and the officers entered the same restaurant and began observing them from a distance. Nick decided to provoke them, so he approached Donnie, pretending to recognize him from the gym. He told Donnie that he hadn't seen him there in a while. Donnie responded by saying that he had been busy lately and couldn't make it to the gym. Ray started to suspect Donnie and felt that he might betray them and work for the police. He took Donnie aside and began questioning him about his connection with Nick. Ray warned him that if he didn't tell the truth, he would kill him. Donnie admitted that Nick had interrogated him and knew the names of all the gang members, but he assured Ray that he hadn't revealed any information about them, emphasizing that he hadn't betrayed them because he still needed the money. Ray decided to trust him and instructed Donnie to inform Nick that there would be a heist on Friday. Donnie did as he was told, but he didn't disclose which bank would be targeted. Later, Nick discovered that the gang had changed their plan and decided to rob a different bank. On the day of the heist, the officers were waiting for the gang to arrive at the bank so they could catch them in the act. Ray and his gang arrived at the bank and made their way inside. Nick waited for the right moment to strike. The gang initiated their operation, disabling the surveillance cameras and confiscating the phones of everyone inside the bank. Ray ordered the bank manager to call the police and informed them that the gang was demanding a private jet along with $10 million in untraceable bills. He warned that if the police delayed for more than an hour, one of the hostages would be killed. Ray also demanded that the police stay away from the premises, making it clear that they didn't want to negotiate and that any attempt to do so would result in the execution of a hostage. Indeed, the bank manager called the police and conveyed the gang's demands. However, Nick was surprised by the nature of these demands, as it wasn't the gang's typical robbery style. Shortly after, Nick was taken aback when the FBI arrived at the scene. He tried to explain that he had control of the situation and asked them not to interfere, but the lead FBI officer ignored him and appointed a negotiator to start talks with the gang. The negotiator contacted Ray, informing him that they would meet his demands. However, Ray warned him that the negotiation itself would cause the death of one of the hostages. He then ordered Bosco to take one of the hostages to kill them. Bosco followed the order, and moments later, gunshots were heard. The bank manager and everyone inside were terrified. Nick was furious with the FBI officer realizing that the hostage's death was their fault for provoking the situation. The negotiator then called the bank manager again, who told him that they were responsible for the hostage's death and urged them to comply with the gang's demands. The negotiator reassured them that the plane would arrive in an hour and a half, pleading for no more deaths. While the authorities were preparing for the plane's arrival, a sudden explosion was heard from inside the bank. Meanwhile, the hacker John was seen communicating with the Federal Reserve Bank, posing as the bank manager of the institution currently under siege. He informed them that a money transport truck was on its way and would arrive in 5 minutes. At this point, Nick began to feel that something was wrong. He suspected that the gang might have already escaped. Acting on his instinct, he decided to take a risk and entered the bank alone. Upon arriving, he found a large tunnel leading to an exit, discovering that the gang had indeed escaped through this route. Nick quickly realized that the real target had been the Federal Reserve Bank all along, and that the heist they were witnessing was just a distraction. Nick rushed out of the bank and informed everyone that the gang had headed to rob the Federal Reserve. By this time, Ray and Lavu were inside the money transport truck that had successfully entered the Federal Reserve Bank. They handed over the money to the officials responsible for counting. The employees began their work, removing the serial numbers from the money. Ray and Lavu stayed to confirm the receipt of the funds. At this moment, we see Donnie hiding inside one of the money crates. Suddenly, the power goes out, forcing the employees to leave the counting room. Donnie emerges from the crate and starts placing all the money with removed serial numbers into the shredding machine, which had stopped working due to the power outage. All the money falls into the trash bin in the garage. Donnie then sneaks into the ventilation shaft, heading toward the bathroom. Meanwhile, the power returns, and the employees resume their work. After finishing the count, they inform Ray and Lavu that the money has been fully received. Donnie reaches the bathroom, retrieves the food bag he had hidden earlier, and delivers it to the employees before leaving the premises. His actions arouse suspicion among the security staff, as they didn't recall seeing him enter the bank that day. Bosco, who had been watching the garbage truck that collected the shredded money, threatened the truck driver and hijacked it. The gang successfully stole the money and drove to a location where they changed their clothes and switched cars to escape unnoticed. As Donnie was leaving the bank, he attempted to contact John, but Nick and the officers spotted him, arrested him, and assaulted him to extract information about the gang's whereabouts. John witnessed this and warned the gang, prompting them to flee the area quickly. However, Nick managed to chase them down, and fortunately, there was a traffic jam ahead. The officers decided to get out of their vehicles to apprehend the gang. The gang noticed the officers approach, armed themselves, and a fierce gunfight broke out, resulting in the death of one officer. The police were able to kill all the gang members except for Ray. Nick pursued Ray and shot him, but Ray resisted and attempted to kill him. In the end, Nick managed to fire several shots at Ray, finally bringing him down. When Nick returned to the car, he discovered that Donnie had escaped and that the bags, which were supposed to contain the stolen money from the gang, were filled with trash. Nick realized that Donnie had been the mastermind behind the entire plan. His scheme was to deceive both the gang and the police, taking all of the money for himself.
If you want interesting movie recaps, like, share, and subscribe to follow us for more movie recaps.